and €1.16. LBC weather fine with clear spells this evening. Some frost though come tomorrow morning in northern areas and a few fog patches in Scotland. A low of -1 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Serena Farrow.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation. Cross Question with Iain Dale.
Hello, a very good evening. It's Cross Question. It's 3 minutes past 8. This is our weekly political panel debate show. If you'd like to ask our panel a question, the number 0345 6060 973. And if you'd like to watch us as well as listen to our very wise words, you can do so as well on the LBC website at lbc.co.uk, the Facebook page, YouTube page, or indeed Twitter. They'll invent 3 other things soon, and I'll have to read those out as well, I guess. Let me introduce you to our panel. Sir Norman Lamb, Lib Dem MP for North Norfolk, former Health Minister. Andrea Jenkyns, Conservative MP for Morley and Outwood. Tommy Sheppard, SNP MP for Edinburgh East, spokesman for Scotland and the Cabinet Office, and the Telegraph columnist and historian, Professor Simon Heffer.
Call 0345 6060 973. Tweet at LBC. Text 84850. Cross Question with Iain Dale on LBC.
Welcome to you all. Let's continue with our first question. Terry is in Whitley Bay. Terry, what would you like to ask?
Hello, Iain. Great show. You're an idiot if you want to be a transport minister.
Oh, well, no, that's not a very nice thing to say.
Well, I think that's a really tough portfolio. The question is, given that it's highly unlikely Labour would win an outright majority, and it has to form a coalition, and likely with both the Liberal Democrats and the SNP, the position politically is that the Liberal Democrats will never sign up to Labour's spending pledges, and the SNP probably won't sign up unless they get a second referendum. So is there any workable electoral pact in that arena?
That is a very interesting question. And of course, I suppose, in a sense, one of the nightmare scenarios for Boris Johnson is that we have a Groundhog Day result, that it is another hung parliament of some description. Norman Lamb, could the Lib Dems work with Labour?
Well, they can't work with Jeremy Corbyn. I think that's clear. And I know that Jo Swinson has made clear that she doesn't feel able to work with either Boris Johnson or Jeremy Corbyn. But who knows what might emerge following the election. I mean, it's pretty unpredictable. The wonderful thing is now that because I'm standing down, I can speak with complete freedom.
Feel free. We encourage this.
So I find it very difficult to know what will happen. But I think as things stand at the moment, any sort of coalition with Labour looks impossible because we just don't agree. We fundamentally don't agree with Jeremy Corbyn's agenda. There's the anti-Semitism issue, which I think is of profound significance. But there's also just the economic agenda, which we don't agree with.
I suppose you could have said some of that before the 2010 election, but has the experience of the coalition, which I know you're very proud of being a minister in the coalition, but has the experience seared the party so much that it's almost impossible to imagine the Liberal Democrats going into coalition, certainly in the immediate future, with anybody, regardless of who was leading the other parties?
Well, I always felt during the coalition that this was a big experiment. Could a small party survive coalition politics and emerge the other side of it? And the conclusion was that you can't really. And of course, under our electoral system, each Lib Dem that gets elected has to, in a way, build up their own personal coalition in their constituency. So I've always had plenty of Conservatives voting for me.
Tell me about it.
Yeah, I'm sorry. In saying that, Iain, I'd forgotten that it was a bit of a sensitive comment to make to you. And of course, I've had...
For those who don't know, in 2005, I opposed Norman Lamb in North Norfolk for the Conservatives, and he whipped my posterior.
Yeah, I think the majority went up from 683 to 10,600.
You don't have to rub it in. It was a long time ago. I've almost got over it.
But you see what happened in North Norfolk. I built up that personal coalition. I had lots of Conservatives voting for me, had lots of Labour people who voted tactically for me to preferring me to the Tory, and then you join in with the Conservatives in coalition, and immediately that coalition is fractured, and Labour-inclined voters say, you've betrayed us. Now, that's not how I saw it. I saw that we were acting in the national interests, and my message to them was, surely it's better to have a Lib Dem MP than a Conservative MP, but it wasn't seen like that by them.
Tommy Sheppard, would you come to Labour's rescue?
Well, I think it's a little bit previous to be speculating on what we're going to be doing after the election before we've even started the campaign.
Jeremy Corbyn is today flirting with you, isn't he?
Well, I'll answer it.
Showing a bit of ankle.
In terms of our participation in the United Kingdom Westminster Parliament, one of our principal objectives is to secure a change in government at the UK level. So we will be part of trying to lock the Tories out of power if that's the arithmetic that the electorate deal us. And that means talking to everybody who shares a similar objective. And there will presumably be deals to be done on the other side of the election. I mean, I don't know how much it's worth speculating about what the shape of those might be. Probably worth saying that from the SNP's point of view, I mean, we wouldn't be part of a coalition in the sense of taking ministerial office and driving ministerial limousines, but it would be more a confidence and supply type arrangement, possibly not dissimilar from what the DUP provided the Conservative Party over the last 2 years.
So it depends on how many billions Jeremy Corbyn offers you.
Well, we would want something in return, and that's going to be
referendum.
Well, no.
Come on, don't be so coy.
Well, you say referendum, but what we want in return is the position that says if the elected Scottish Parliament were to vote by a majority to consult people in Scotland through another referendum, then Westminster would not veto that. I mean, that's the objective.
And he's more or less made that clear now.
I'm not expecting people who are completely antipathetic to independence to suddenly say it's a good idea. I'm not even expecting them to say that a referendum is a good idea. But I do want them to say that really should be a matter for people in Scotland to decide, not for Boris Johnson.
Andrea Jenkyns, is the nightmare scenario for you another hung Parliament? Because clearly, apart from the DUP, it's difficult to see any other party wanting to either enter into a confidence and supply arrangement or a coalition with the Conservatives. So we have a sort of groundhog Parliament then, don't we? We just continue in this awful mess.
I completely agree with you. The fact is, we've seen how difficult it is to get legislation through at the moment, and it would be a nightmare scenario. And we couldn't really buddy it with the Lib Dems because we've got completely different policies over Brexit. And while Brexit is, we need to deliver that, then I couldn't see that kind of coalition. But I look back to 2015, and when Nicola Sturgeon was, doing the leadership debates, up in Yorkshire, that actually put votes our way because they didn't want to see, a Labour SNP coalition. So I think, bring it on in this election talking like this because I think we can help secure a Conservative majority. But back to, will the likes of the SNP, Lib Dems, form a coalition? I think any chance of power, I think, they're going to take it. If it means that they've got that chance of power and influence in policy as part of the government, then I think why would they turn it down?
Simon Heffer, what can we learn from history in the likely result here and the results from it?
I keep thinking of 1923, which you and I remember very well.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
The last time, as has been much reported, there was a December election in this country, and there had to be another election the following October. And the Conservatives won in 1923 in terms of they had the largest number of seats. Labour came second, and the Liberal Party, which was fractured between Asquithian Liberals and Lloyd George Liberals, shared most of the rest of the seats. The King told Baldwin wanted to resign having lost, and the King told Baldwin he must meet Parliament and try and get a King's speech through, which Baldwin did, and he didn't get a King's speech through, and we had the first Labour government. Ramsay MacDonald had 191 of Westminster's 615 seats, and he lasted 9 months. Actually less than that, 8 months, and then had to resign. And we had a 5-year Conservative government. I think something similar could happen. I think we could. I'm convinced we're going to have a hung parliament. I can't see where the 326 seats are that the Conservative Party is going to win. I'm pretty certain they'll get more seats than anybody else. And much of this depends, of course, on the Brexit Party, which we're waiting for Nigel Farage to let us know what he intends to do, whether he's going to stand against a lot of these MPs, the Tory MPs or incumbent Tory MPs, and prevent them from winning their seats again. But, I defer to Mr Sheppard on his knowledge of Scotland, but the Tories will not win, I think, 13 seats in Scotland again. They seem to be doing badly in the West Country and in other parts of the country where the Liberal Democrats have historically been quite strong. And I think they're quite vulnerable in London.
Yeah.
So when you add all that up, I think we have a minority Tory government.
Is it seats
but if I just finish,
okay.
I wouldn't rule out a confidence and supply motion or arrangement between a Conservative Party that's done badly in an election, and either the leader may have lost his seat in Uxbridge where he only has a 5,000 majority, and the Tories.
This is wishful thinking on your part.
Well, no, it's not wishful thinking, Ian, because the Conservative Party are not as strong in London as they are elsewhere in the country, and he's got a 5,000 majority. He's got a very active candidate up against him, backed by momentum. Anything could happen there. And it's just possible that the Conservative Party will end up with a new leader in short order after an election that they have performed badly and would have come out as the largest party. And then the Liberal Democrats agree to do a confidence and supply arrangement with them. But I think in the end we'll have 2 elections next year.
Norman, you weren't shaking your head there.
I think it's extraordinarily unlikely. I really do. I mean, the idea that we could go from where we're at now to a confidence supply arrangement with the Conservatives in December is for the birds, I think.
Andrea Jenkyns, in a sense, you were a forerunner of what could happen here because you won your seat in 2015 against all the odds, ousting Ed Balls. And it's seats like yours now, and sort of in your kind of broad area, that the Conservatives have got to win if they're to make up for these losses that Simon has been talking about. How likely is that?
I think it's very likely. Yorkshire and the Midlands and the North, I think it can be up for grabs for the Conservatives. I mean, my seat was Labour for 85 years. I've actually only got one Conservative councillor in the whole constituency. So, I've never stopped campaigning since I was a candidate in 2013. I'll just give an example. When Boris came to my constituency, we saw how the BBC just showed the one heckler, but in reality, there's literally hundreds of people. There was running out the shops to shake Boris's hand and say thank you for what you're doing on Brexit. There was parents asking for selfies with their children with Boris, and he had like this star quality welcome. So he does seem to go down well overall in my constituency.
That's very interesting because I constantly get people saying to me, "Oh, of course Boris people don't get him outside the M25," and I keep saying, "You walk down the street with him and see what happens." And that's what you've said. It kind of proves that.
But also, we're witnessing before our eyes the reshaping of politics in this country, and a new divide has developed, and it doesn't sit comfortably with the existing party boundaries, particularly for Labour, who, of course, have been horribly divided over Brexit. But it will result, I think, in potentially Conservatives winning in strong Brexit areas, but also very strong tactical voting amongst Remain parties in Remain areas, which could result in Lib Dems winning seats from Conservatives in the southeast of England and in London. Possibly more difficult in the southwest because they're Brexit areas, although not exclusively. And so I could see the Lib Dems winning quite a few seats from the Conservatives, along with the Tories losing seats to the SNP in Scotland, bearing out really what Simon has said about the difficulty of securing a majority.
Could I also say, I mean, Norman's absolutely right. It's highly unlikely there'll be a confidence and supply deal between the Conservative Party and the Lib Dems if Johnson is still leader.
Yeah.
I'm talking about if Johnson goes. I think if Johnson goes for any reason, even if he holds his seat, they may be so disillusioned that this man who's been described as a winner all the way through, if he doesn't end up winning the election outright, but has perhaps got an even more hung parliament in terms of a much bigger Liberal Democrat representation in parliament than we've had in the last couple of years, he could be in real trouble. And then somebody else might come in and say, well, we've got to govern this country. Let's see what we can discuss. Also, this could hang on. We could be still discussing this in early January. The Queen's are going to open Parliament on the 23rd of December, which is when it would normally be. So if there's a state opening on the 6th of January, it might not even be until then that we've actually decided who's going to...
But Simon, remember that the Lib Dems, I don't necessarily agree with it, but have become a Remain party and ardently Remain. And the idea of, even if Boris Johnson loses his seat, the Conservatives getting to a position where they agree to a people's vote, for example, to get Lib Dem support, I just don't see it happening.
Tommy,
he's
you
bound
wanted
to be
to come
replaced
in.
by another Brexiteer.
Yeah, well, actually, Norman said what I was going to say, because I think the thing that does cut through all of this is the Brexit debate and the alignment that MPs will have in that. And if, as Simon suggests, the Conservatives have a minority of the seats in the Parliament, then I'm pretty sure that means that there will be a majority of MPs elected who will want to put this question back to the people in some sort of further referendum, because certainly that would be the Liberal Democrat, the SNP position. I guess that's what's going to be in the Labour manifesto, though they won't say how they're going to campaign in that referendum, but it will be there. So I would have thought that the necessity to get that done, given that most people recognise this as an election where Brexit has to be resolved one way or the other.
We might have a question on that a little bit later.
Right.
If you want,
so I think that would mitigate against the interesting proposition that Simon suggested.
if you'd like to ask a question on things other than the election, you're very welcome to do so, but obviously the election is predominating at the moment. Interesting little bit of breaking news. Twitter is banning all political advertising, saying the reach of such messages should be earned, not bought. Might see what our panel think of that in just a moment. It's 19 minutes past 8.
This is LBC. Sheila Fogarty, Monday to Friday from 1 p.m.
What's the evidence for the DUP softening? They don't normally...
If Boris turns out to them quietly and says, either you back this thing when you've got a chance that it might be renegotiated over the coming years, or we simply cut you off from Treasury.
What do you mean cut you off from Treasury? You mean stop giving you bonds?
He would sacrifice the north of Ireland.
I think he would. Whether he will, on what basis, is a different question.
With Blink, an Amazon company, helping give your family peace of mind.
LBC.
Money. How does that word make you feel? You might be thinking about what you'd love to spend it on, or what you have to spend it on. Maybe you think you're just bad with money, but here's the thing. You're not. You're just with the wrong bank. At Starling Bank, we want you to feel good about money. So we built a personal and business bank account with clever budgeting tools, instant payment alerts, and no fees when you spend overseas. Starling Bank. Voted Britain's best bank twice. Download the app today. Smart Money People Awards. Eligibility criteria applies.
Global Player. Radio, playlists and podcasts.
Where it's all together.
And all for free.
So, whatever your mood.
Whatever you're doing.
And wherever you're going.
Tackling the biggest stories.
And the issues that matter.
Global Player. Download it from your App Store now.
At Lidl's Monster Market, we're big on spooktacular Halloweens. Big on the ghastliest pumpkins from 65p and costumes from $4.99. Spooky. Big on ghoulish treats from 49p. How nice. Now that's big on quality. And always Lidl on price. Subject to availability. Selected stores only. Excludes NI.
Fly with Cathay Pacific and arrive ready to make the most of the endless white beaches of Bali. Book now at cathaypacific.com. Cathay Pacific. Move beyond.
Clean shirt?
Yep.
Tie straight?
Uh-huh.
Shoes polished?
Yes.
You work hard to make a good impression when out with customers. And with eReceptionist,
Landline number.
your phone works just as hard
Studio recorded greeting.
when they call in.
24/7 answering?
All sorted.
eReceptionist, the professional business phone system that's just 30 pence a day. To find out more and get your free 30-day trial, search eReceptionist. Free trial cancellation required to avoid charges. Conditions apply.
And now we go live to Tyrrell's Farm.
Down here in Herefordshire, the folks are busy bringing in a bumper crop of local spuds. And of course, when you have the finest potatoes, only the tastiest ingredients will do. That's where the tasting team come in.
Big chilli coming through.
All this ensures their crisps taste ruddy-licious. In fact, the Tyrrell's team have done such a spiffing job, people across the land are calling their crisps terribly, terribly tasty.
In the trade, sign up to Wix Trade Pro and get 10% off every time you shop with no minimum spend. Download the app to register. Always cheaper with Wix Trade Pro. Terms apply.
Cross Question with Iain Dale on LBC.
22 minutes past 8. Don't forget you can watch us on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter or the LBC website at lbc.co.uk. Our panel, Sir Norman Lamb, Andrea Jenkyns, Tommy Sheppard, Simon Heffer with us till 9. And let's go to Robbie in Granada in Spain. Hello, Robbie.
Yes, good evening, Ian. I enjoy your show. I listen to you regularly.
Thank you.
My question is, which you've already been discussing, is do you see a Conservative clear majority in the election or a hung parliament and the problems that would involve?
Tommy Sheppard, what's your prediction? Because this is the most difficult election to predict, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think one of the problems is that the national opinion polls are limited in the use in analysing what's going to happen, because I think what can happen with polls is like if the Tories are doing rather well, it might just mean that the Tory vote is really stacking up in Conservative areas, and what we need probably more psephological information on is exactly what the opinion is in those battleground seats, the 100 or so seats that are going to make the difference. And I think, as Andrea was saying, it does look like most of them, when you overlay it with Brexit, are going to be in the north of England and the Midlands. So I'd like to see some serious analysis of those seats. But as Simon was saying, I mean, in Scotland, it would be nice if we could get a Tory-free country. It may not be possible, but they are certainly going to lose heavily in Scotland, and I know they're going to lose in London and other areas as well. So it is difficult to see how they get to a majority government. So I guess if you want me to put money on it, at this stage, I'd plump for another hung parliament. Although, just because it's another hung parliament, it still could be a step forward. Because one of the problems with this hung parliament is that there's too many people in it with a mandate that's out of date and that they don't particularly agree with. Particularly on the Labour side, there's a lot of people who stood and got elected on the basis of delivering Brexit, and that's not really what they believe and it's not what they want to do. So them having a fresh mandate, as it were, to say, you know what, we'll take this back and let the people have another say on it, that might allow Parliament to unlock the status that it's in at the moment.
Andrea Jenkyns, clearly you're going to say you believe there will be a Tory majority, because you have to say that, whether you believe it or not. I'm sure you do believe
Ian, I'll always say what I think.
I know, yes. I'm sure you do believe it, but how do you get to that majority?
I mean, I'd just like to start from where we are at the moment. We've had 3.5 years of frustration. We've seen, so many shenanigans in Parliament. People are frustrated out there, people are angry, and this will definitely be a Brexit election. It's different than it was in 2017 in the fact that we've got the three main parties who have got different Brexit stances this time. All three parties stood previously to deliver Brexit and respect the referendum. We've got the Lib Dems wanting to revoke and stop Brexit. Labour want a second referendum and the Conservatives want to deliver. So I do think that, let's not forget that the majority of constituencies across the country voted to leave, both in Labour and in Conservative as well. So I think that people are going to go and look at what of their individual MP done. Have they respected what they voted for, whether it's Remain in Scotland or seats like mine, where it's a Brexit seat. So I seriously think that we can get a majority. And where will we get them from? Yes, I do think that there's some danger seats that we took off Lib Dems in 2015, and in Scotland it's going to be very tough for the Conservatives, which is a shame because we've got some fantastic Conservative MPs up there. But I do think we're going to see some surprises in the Midlands and the North in this election.
Simon, you've already kind of answered this question already. You think that there will be a hung parliament. What would the consequence of that be, do you think?
Well, can I say I'd be much more certain about this when we know what the Brexit Party is going to do.
I agree with that. Yeah.
If they decide to contest a lot of Conservative-held seats, then the Conservatives got real problems. What will be the consequences of it? We'll have to have another election within a year. That'll be the consequence. Yeah. I don't think people will put up with another 2.5 years, for example, that we've had since the last one, of not being able to make a decision. I think that, particularly if we've dealt with Brexit, shortly after this election happens. If the EU have said there's no more extension, a deal for whatever it's worth has been agreed by Parliament. If we get out on the 31st of January, then Brexit to an extent ceases to be an issue, and then we have another election about actually how we govern this country, and that's what I think will be the main consequence. One thing, Andrea said, and she is a living representation of anti-tribalism in Labour seats, because she won her seat. I think it was the first time for 85 years there hadn't been a Labour MP there. But I'm afraid that there are too many tribal Labour seats in those areas in the North and the Midlands where people, even though they are Brexiteers, will vote for a party that is supporting Remain or is coming around to support Remain. And that's going to be the Tory party.
So the tribal loyalties are so strong, you mean?
Yeah.
But it could be that a lot of those people stay at home rather. They don't want to vote Labour for Brexit reasons, but they can't bring themselves to vote Conservative.
I'm sure they can't bring themselves to vote Conservative. They might bring themselves to go and vote for the Brexit Party if it's standing.
Can I just come in here in a second? I received an email a few weeks ago, and quite remarkably, this chap, he was an ex-miner. He was there on the picket line, got arrested, etc. And he'd been a lifelong Labour voter. And he said that, is a Brexiteer and his grandfather be turning in his grave, but, he is supporting Conservatives and he wants to see Boris go to victory. So I think it just shows you how things can change.
I'm sure there are some, Yes. I'm sure there are some.
I think that might be the exception that proves the rule, to be honest.
Norman.
It's possible.
Yeah. Well, as I said earlier, I think we are seeing a reshaping of politics, and I think we can look to the United States for some guidance as to what can happen. And Donald Trump managed to create a new coalition of support for the Republicans, which included very many working class white and some black workers in the States. And I don't rule out people who've spent their lives voting Labour in this new divide choosing to vote for a sort of populist right agenda under the Conservatives. So I would say that as things stand at the moment, I would say the Conservatives are more likely than not to emerge with a majority. But we just have to look to 2017 to realise that everything can change over the course of a campaign. And I remember the moment in North Norfolk when the Conservative manifesto came out, the dementia tax exploded, and everything changed. Now, it won't be the same thing that happens this time, but the unpredictability of election campaigns can change everything. The final thing I'd say, sort of Brexit related, is that I think this will come down as a historic miscalculation by hard Remainers, because hard Remainers have held out for Remain at the expense of any other option. They haven't engaged with any sort of debate about what sort of Brexit we should end up with, and it's allowed, with all due respect, the right wing of the Conservative Party to prevail when there could have been a majority in Parliament for leaving, but with a close economic relationship. The vote on Common Market 2.0, which is in effect a relationship like Norway, attracted votes from Conservatives such as George Eustace, who used to be a UKIP member, but it also attracted votes from the Labour Party and from me, but none of my colleagues. One of my colleagues. But that refusal to engage, I think, has handed Brexit to the right wing, and we've ended up with a hard Brexit as a result.
Is that partly the reason that you're standing down? Because obviously your party has gone in that direction under Jo Swinson, and that you feel so out of step with what she's doing on this?
I found the last 3 years intensely difficult. I feel isolated, sadly, and so I leave Parliament feeling quite distressed about it. I've felt very proud to represent the Liberal tradition in Parliament for over 18 years, but I feel that we've become the Remain party, not necessarily a Liberal party. I still want the Liberal Democrats to do well, and I want the Lib Dems in my seat to beat the Conservatives, but I want us to paint an optimistic, progressive liberal vision for our country rather than just refight the battle of 2016.
More to come from our panel here with Norman Lamb, Andrea Jenkyns, Tommy Sheppard and Simon Heffer. The lines, got 2 lines free, 0345 6060 973. It's 8:32. Serena Farrow has the news headlines.
Relatives of those who died in Grenfell Tower have called for fire chiefs to be prosecuted. The public inquiry into the tragedy found the London Fire Brigade's preparation for a tower block fire was gravely inadequate and its lack of evacuation plan a major omission. Thames Valley Police has arrested a boy tonight in connection with a double murder investigation in Milton Keynes. A 16-year-old boy from the town's been arrested on suspicion of murder and is currently in custody. And Boris Johnson and Jeremy Corbyn have clashed over the NHS, Brexit and leadership at the last Prime Minister's questions before the general election. It was the longest ever session, lasting 71 minutes. LBC weather fine with clear spells overnight. Some frost in northern areas and a few fog patches in Scotland. A low of -1 degrees.
LBC.
Get an Ocean credit card. Check if you're eligible in minutes without affecting your credit score. It comes with a credit limit of up to £1,500 too. So get online and check for yourself at ocean.co.uk and get all that from Ocean. Intelligent Lending Limited is a credit broker. Capital One, the exclusive lender. Representative 39.9% APR variable.
Get the brands you love at littlewoods.com. Nothing beats a winter night in with the family and a box set. Get the LG 4K 43-inch TV with HDR for an unmissable $369. All with inclusive delivery and free returns. Hurry, offer ends 7th of November. Own it. Shop now at littlewoods.com.
Hi, Susan. What's a Brew City Brew Bite?
It's Beer Munch.
Oh, all right. But what exactly is it?
It's Beer Munch.
Okay. But what about a Brew City Halloumi Fry?
It's Beer Munch.
And an onion straw?
It's Beer Munch.
Yeah, it's Beer Munch. Yeah, so you keep saying. Hot, shareable snacks that are delicious with a cold beer and friends. You'll find them in the freezer aisle. Brew City.
It's Beer Munch.
I've always loved a kitchen experiment, especially smoothies. I've blended all sorts of mad combinations. Strawberry and charcoal, broccoli and chocolate. Not my best, that. But when I test blenders in the Witch Lab, it's not about flavour, it's about performance. Our tests use proper tough stuff, hard ice, strong veg, rough nuts. And the blenders that can hack it are the only ones we recommend for your kitchen.
Which tests harder so you can buy smarter. Visit which.co.uk.
Fly Ryanair to Dublin this winter. Cosy up with live music in one of Dublin's pubs. Check out the free museums or head to the coast for delicious seafood. Fly to Dublin from just $24.99 per person one way. Ryanair. Low fares made simple. Limited availability. Book by November 30th for travel by the end of March 2020. For conditions, see ryanair.com.
At Wickes, right now, there's 15% off our wide range of tiles and flooring, on top of existing offers. In-store and at wickes.co.uk. Ends Monday. Terms apply.
Cross Question with Iain Dale on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
2529 here on LBC. You're listening to Cross Question with Norman Lamb, Andrea Jenkyns, Tommy Sheppard and Simon Heffer. Tony in Barry in South Wales has an interesting question. Go ahead, Tony.
Hello.
Hi.
My question is double standards of MP. You've got MPs who got voted in by the people voted them in, and a couple of months later or years later, this Brexit cropped up. You've got MPs who resigned from the party, and yet they're still getting paid, and they join another party which people didn't vote for, and they're getting paid and carrying on and changing different parties. It can't be right. Don't you think we ought to have some rules and regulations brought in? I mean, there's one MP 4 years ago, the people voted to come out of Wales, to come out of the Commonwealth, the
Common Market,
EC, yeah, Common Market. The very next day, he sent a bus, painted in his name, advertised to remain, and yet the people voted to come out.
Okay.
And,
all right. Well,
just a minute. Let me finish. This person, if you have a look on the Facebook, he had £30,000 pumped into his account.
I don't know who you're talking about there, and it's probably just as well that I don't know who you're talking about. Simon Heffer, the main point I think Tony was making, look, people who defect from one party to another, I suppose, should there be regulation? Should they have to fight a by-election? I think there was a motion that Sarah Wollaston put forward in 2011 to that effect.
Yes, I don't think she fought a by-election when she changed parties, did she? But let's not go there. This goes back to the old question of Burke's point. Edmund Burke, I mean, in the late 18th century, that an MP is the representative and not the delegate of his or her constituents. And the party labels that people stand under at elections are really flags of convenience. They're to differentiate one candidate from another. They're not legally binding. All I would say is, in 35 years of covering politics, usually when somebody does this, he or she gets defeated at the next election because their constituents tend not to like it very much. So they get what's coming to them in the end. And, we've had a lot of fiddling about the British Constitution, most of it disastrously. I think of the Fixed Term Parliaments Act for some reason. And I wouldn't want to start fiddling around with redefining the legal status of an MP's party. I think that would be very deleterious. There's an election, we're about to have yet another election. We may get another one next year. There's plenty of opportunity for a constituency to get rid of a Member of Parliament who does the dirty on them in their view.
What's interesting, Norman Lamb, is that 3 of the politicians who have defected to the Liberal Democrats from other parties are now fighting other seats. You've got Sam Gmar, who was East Surrey, he's doing Kensington. Philip Lee, bizarrely, has gone from Bracknell to next door Wokingham to fight John Redwood. I don't know how he thinks he's going to do there. And Chuka Amuna,
because it's a Remain seat, the new divide in politics. This is what they're
John Redwood's
judging.
seat is a Remain seat, is it? Is it?
That's
really?
my understanding.
Goodness me. Well, Chuka Amuna has gone from Streatham to the City of London and Westminster, which, I suppose that might be a more likely win. But it's a bit odd, isn't it? And the electorate look at this and think, well, what's going on?
So I think every politician has to be very careful how they answer these questions, because every party has benefited from defections at some time or other over the years. And Simon's absolutely right. Our system is a system of representative democracy where the MP gets elected for better or worse and is held to account by the electorate when the next election comes along. And we've had this fascinating clash over the last few years between that representative democracy and the direct democracy that's emerged through the referendum outcome. And we've really struggled, I think, with that. And, people have become very frustrated with a parliament that many people see as resisting the will of the people, as it were. But it is this awful and complex clash. And in this country, we haven't had a tradition of direct democracy. They have it in Switzerland, and they have it in states in the United States. But I think it creates complexities that your caller has identified. But I think I'm with Simon. Stick with the principle that you elect someone to exercise their judgment for better or worse, and you get rid of them at the next election if you don't like the way they've done it.
I thought you were going to say stick with nurse for fear of worse.
Well, you could use that one as well.
Tommy Sheppard, defections in Scotland. There have been defections between parties in Scotland, but I get the feeling that they're not as common as in the rest of the UK.
No, I can't think of anybody who's defected to the SNP after being elected. Obviously there's been a lot of political realignment. I used to be in the Labour Party, and pretty much everybody I knew in the Labour Party 20 years ago is now in the SNP. And but we all got elected on an SNP ticket. In answer to the question, I think there is a moral obligation on people that if they were elected on one particular platform and they then choose to switch to a different, even perhaps an opposite political platform, I think there's a moral obligation to submit themselves to the will of the electorate again and say, this is what I think. But it's very difficult, I think, to create rules for it, because, of course, you get into an argument where people say, well, my views haven't changed.
Yes,
it's the party that's changed.
Exactly.
So I'm doing what I said I would do in the election, but I have to leave the party because it's all going to. I wonder, for example, what would happen if somebody got elected in Scotland on a pro-independence ticket and then turned around and said, well, actually, I'm not really in favour of that after all. I mean, that would be an outrage.
What about, Andrea Jenkyns, what about expanding the remit of the recall for hit this? Why not say, if, say, 20% of the constituents call for a by-election if somebody defects to another party, for example? Might that work?
I can't see any problem with that. But it's definitely worth looking into. But I just want to bring back to the representative democracy point, the Burkean. Yes, that is the case ordinarily, but I think it's different this time because, politicians gave people a vote where the referendum was concerned, and we returned a majority for Brexit, and so we can't then suddenly slap them in the...
an advisory referendum where MPs then... Well, I agree with you, but
yes.
that's the argument, isn't it?
And we can't suddenly slap people in the face and say, we're not listening to you when clearly... a million more people voted to leave. And I just think that politicians have got a hell of a lot of work to do. There's such a disconnect at the moment and a lack of trust.
Totally. I agree.
And I do think we need to work on restoring trust. I mean, I'll admit during my Theresa May's reign from the December last year right through to, the May and the awful local and Euro elections, you do look and think, this wasn't the Conservative Party that I came into in 2015, but I would never have thought of defecting or resigning the whip, etc., because to me I got elected as a Conservative and I want to see Conservative in power, Conservative majority in power, and to me leaders come and go, but ultimately I'm a Conservative.
A text here from somebody who remains anonymous. Iain, the Tory election slogan for the Midlands of the North should be hold your nose and vote for Boris, because that's what lifelong Labour voters like me will do. Well, we'll see, I suppose, in 6 weeks' time. Right, more questions in a moment for Norman Lamb, Andrea Jenkyns, Tommy Sheppard and Simon Heffer. You're listening to LBC. It's coming up to 8:45.
James O'Brien, Monday to Friday from 10 a.m.
When Boris campaigned saying that we would leave the EU on the 31st, he had no idea his own party would vote against him. David, he did have an idea that his own party might vote against him, mate, because he voted against his own party when Theresa May was Prime Minister. He had no idea his own party would vote against him. If only there'd been some clue that Conservative MPs might vote against a Conservative Prime Minister in the context of a withdrawal agreement. Some little hint, some tiny, tiny suggestion that was a plausible possibility. Oh yeah, there's him actually doing it a few weeks ago.
Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
Fly Ryanair to Dublin this winter. Cosy up with live music in one of Dublin's pubs. Check out the free museums or head to the coast for delicious seafood. Fly to Dublin from just $24.99 per person one way. Ryanair. Low fares made simple. Limited availability. Book by November 30th for travel by the end of March 2020. For conditions, see ryanair.com.
Take 78.
Enjoy our unbelievable Super Saver deal with 2 Co-op British ranch steaks and skinny fries for only £4.
Yep, you went over the top again. Take 79.
Our latest Super Saver deal. Co-op. It's what we do. Normally £7.50, subject to availability, participating stores. Offer ends 19th of November.
The perfect day. Very rarely we're lucky enough to enjoy it. When everything seems to be going just right. Like when you beat the queue for your morning bacon butty. Your lunchtime banter goes viral. And then to top it off, the delivery for your latest project actually arrives on time. It's just like when you're driving 2019's Auto Express Pickup of the Year, the new Ford Ranger. Available with a 1-ton load capacity, 2-litre bi-turbo EcoBlue engine, and selectable driving modes. So, let nothing stand in your way on those crisp autumnal days. Discover more. Search New Ford Ranger. Ford Commercial Vehicles. Backbone of Britain.
If you're collecting your prescription, don't assume you can claim it for free. Not all benefits entitle you to free prescriptions. And if you claim when you're not entitled, you could face a penalty charge of up to £100. Thankfully, there's a simple way to find out if you should be paying. Search Check Before You Tick online and use our eligibility checker to find out if your benefits mean you can claim for free, or you can ask your pharmacy team. So always remember to check before you tick. This was brought to you by the NHS.
To make the most out of my savings, I need an account with a great rate, easy access and no fees, of course. That's why Saga have launched a new easy access savings account. It's designed for the over 50s, with a rate of 1.4% AER variable. You can put some money in or take some out whenever it suits you, with access online or by phone. Search Saga Savings to find out more.
Provided by Goldman Sachs International Bank for Saga. Includes a bonus rate of 0.25% gross fixed for 12 months.
And now we go live to Tyrrell's Farm.
When it comes to making truly tasty crisps, the folks here in Herefordshire are masters of their craft. Every batch of local spuds is thickly sliced, then hand-cooked with their skins on to give them their characterful curls and extremely satisfying crunch. These nifty curls also ensure every last sprinkle of seasoning stays on the crisps and not in the bag. So, choose Tyrrell's crisps for your next big bash. They're terribly, terribly tasty.
Cross Question with Iain Dale on LBC. Text 84850.
8:48. Let's go to Francesca, who's a new caller in Bradford. Hello, Francesca. What would you like to ask?
Hi, good evening. I'm just wondering today, aside of Brexit, what do the panel think is the most important policy their respective parties should campaign on in the election?
Tommy Sheppard, I think I know the answer to this that you're going to give, but let's ignore independence for a moment. But if it wasn't independence, what do you think is the biggest issue facing Scottish politics at the moment?
Sorry, Ian, I don't think you can, honestly.
Well, I tried.
But there's sort of, it's almost two election campaigns. I mean, the election here is going to be about Brexit, and the parties will try and make it about other things as well. And it will be about that in Scotland too. But this is overlaid by a much bigger and longer running debate, which is that whether or not the United Kingdom ends up leaving the European Union, who should decide whether Scotland does that? And there is now a growing appetite for a further referendum on Scottish independence, and in particular a growing appetite that says that the decision on whether or not there should be one should rest with the Scottish Parliament, which is elected by people in Scotland. And Boris Johnson's implacably opposed to that. He said he won't countenance that, and that is going to be a big debate in the election. Not are you in favour of independence, but who should have the right to decide on that question?
Just on that, let me quickly and give 30-second answers if you can on this. If the SNP get, say, 50 seats in the election, which is not beyond the realms of possibility, they've already got control of the Scottish Parliament. They stood on an election of having a referendum. Simon Heffer, do you not think that whoever forms the government is almost morally bound to grant a referendum?
Well, how often are we going to have them? No, I don't think they're morally bound to have a referendum. If we do have a referendum, I think that everybody else in the kingdom should have a vote as well. I'd like us to be consulted. I'd have liked to be consulted in 2014. I mean, I wrote a book 20 years ago saying that this country had made the biggest mistake in its history, ignoring the movement for Home Rule in Ireland in the 1880s and an early part of the last century. And that is not something I want to repeat with Scotland. If the Scots wish to leave the Union, then they should be facilitated to do so. But referendums, I think, are something that you have once in a generation. You don't have them every 5 or 6 years. I think it just devalues the whole idea.
Norman?
Yeah, I'm not sure there's a moral case for it. I think my biggest anxiety about where we're at with Brexit is that I think there is a real prospect of the breakup of the United Kingdom, which, as someone who's half Scottish myself, I would be very sad about. I think the deal that Boris Johnson has struck brings forward the reality of a united Ireland. I think that's almost inevitable, because we're creating an economic unit between North and South, and that's why there's such anger and frustration amongst unionists. And I think along with that, I think this is the height of irresponsibility, because I think it brings with it a massive increased risk, as the Chief Constable in Ulster has said publicly, an increased risk of violence on the streets not from Republicans but from hardline Protestants.
Okay. Andrea?
Do you want answering about that, or
Well,
was it
very
the lady?
very quickly on the referendum.
Referendum. I mean, I'm a unionist, and I don't want to see. We've had a referendum in Scotland, and it goes back to.
But if the SNP were elected on a manifesto of having a referendum, and then they get 50 of the 59 seats, this is 59, isn't it? Surely there is a kind of moral imperative on the government to say, yeah, okay, you can have it.
Majority of the votes? I don't think so.
What, in Scotland?
Yeah, I mean, they could get 50 out of 59 seats, but they wouldn't necessarily have a majority of the votes in Scotland. And
well, Donald Trump didn't have the majority of votes.
No, I know,
he's
but you're asking whether there's a moral case for it, and I don't think that would necessarily bring a moral case.
Well, let's go back to the original question from Francesca. Andrea, what's your answer to that? What issue do you think will come to the fore apart from Brexit?
Well, I mean, whether it will come to the fore or not, I think the most important issue after Brexit is which party is going to handle the economy in the best way, because, that affects everything, how much we can put into education, health, policing, etc. But, I mean, what I get on the doorstep is education. And as somebody who is a mum of a toddler myself, education is the core, because, it has a knock-on effect on the economy, it has a knock-on effect on health. So I think what our education policy is going forward, I think that's going to be very important.
And I would say that I think it's shocking and deeply disturbing that per student funding of education here and now compared to 2015 is significantly lower, and that disadvantaged areas are losing out more significantly than wealthier areas. And that's the sort of divide that I fear under the Conservative government, and a reason why I want to see a progressive liberal alternative to that. But I think alongside that, the climate emergency has to be something that all parties take much more seriously than we have done hitherto.
Simon?
Well, I don't have a party, unlike the other three people here tonight.
What a wonderful position to be in.
I know. My principal concerns are these. I want Brexit finished and done, and I want the vote of 2016 honoured.
Completely.
And that is the most urgent thing. I want some constitutional reform in this country. We talked earlier about fixed-term parliaments. What this farrago has shown over the last 3 years or so is that there's an awful lot wrong with the way our constitution runs. We need a proper debate on it. People say it's not as important as the economy or education or the health service, but actually it makes us an international laughing stock. So let's get that sorted out and then go on and deal with the other important things such as that. I mean, I agree with Andrea about education. I mean, I teach at a university. I think that there's a lot wrong with our schools. I think there's a lot wrong with our universities as well. I think we've put quantity ahead of quality with universities, and I want the best people from wherever they come from to get to university, and there's too many universities carrying too many passengers at the moment. But the most important thing for me is defence. We talk about exercising soft power. We have shamefully, under a Conservative government, I'm afraid, run down our armed forces to a dreadful level, and we can't exercise soft power. We can't be a successful diplomatic operation in the world if we don't have proper armed forces to back us up.
Tommy?
Well, since I'm here, Ian, I wouldn't mind a brief right of reply in terms of some of the points on the Scottish independence question. I mean, I have a tremendous respect for Norman Land, but I have to say that I think his comments he made there are not very liberal. To be honest, I think if a majority of people in a particular area wish to do something, I don't think it's fair for people elsewhere to say they cannot do it. Whether or not there should be another referendum is a judgment call, and the judgment should be made by the people who are most affected by it. And if they, through their elected parliament, wish to do that, I think that decision should be respected. And I'm not asking anyone to agree with independence or even to agree with having a referendum. I'm simply asking for that decision of the elected parliament to be respected. And as for Simon's position, where he thinks that the people in the rest of the United Kingdom should be consulted in this, and I find that fanciful. I mean, Well,
why not we pay for Scotland?
Well, no, you do not pay for Scotland.
You know
pay for Scotland at all.
You know that there's a 25 billion. Tommy, there's a 25 billion annual subvention.
Simon, the logic of your argument is to say that even if people in Scotland didn't want to be United Kingdom, they'll jolly well be forced to do so because people elsewhere want them to be. I mean, and that is a ridiculous
I want to be consulted. I'm a taxpayer funding your country. I'd like to be consulted.
People in Scotland pay taxes too.
I know they do. They don't pay enough to keep Scotland going.
Yes, they do.
Scotland would have gone bankrupt by 2016 2016.
That's
if
ridiculous.
The oil price collapsed.
Absolutely ridiculous.
The oil price collapsed.
The case for independence is not
2014.
predicated on the oil price.
Also,
right?
you didn't have a currency. You didn't know what currency you were going to have. And you didn't know whether you were going to be allowed in the EU. Well, you couldn't have the pound. We wouldn't let you. You'd have been like a banana republic.
We never
in the
got
West
that far.
Indies
It
using the dollar.
wasn't theirs to allow us to have or not. It was the United Kingdom pound, and if Scotland wanted to trade with it, they should have been allowed to do so. But as it happens, we will.
Can I just say,
you hadn't got a currency.
Can I say,
we will be forming
our
own currency.
Right, one at a time.
In my right of reply to Tommy, I would say that if those advocating independence got more than 50% of the vote and were in power in the Scottish Parliament, then I think there is a case. But you could get elected, as we know, both in the United Kingdom but also in the Scottish Parliament, without a majority. And I'm not sure that therefore makes the case for.
But the Scottish Parliament is elected by proportional representation, more or less, and you have to get pretty close to 50% to be able to form a majority. And actually, the SNP Green Coalition.
I'm going to apologise to Stephen Horsham, who's been waiting patiently to ask a question about the first past the post voting system, but because of your little contretemps on Scottish independence, we haven't quite got time to squeeze you in, Steve. Steve, we'll try and get you on next week if we can, but I do want to finish with a text from Mary in Wanstead, who says, Iain, please ask the panel, since we were supposed to leave the EU tomorrow, 31st of October, what would the panellists wear to a Brexit-themed Halloween party?
I wouldn't go.
That's a cop-out, an uncharacteristic cop-out, if I may say so.
Need a Superman costume.
Tommy Sheppard, you must have been to the old fancy dress party in your time.
Well, yeah, I think Superman would be called to try and get Brexit done by tomorrow. I mean, it was always a fanciful suggestion by a fantasist, and it's not going to happen.
Simon Heffer.
Well, I would wear black Wellington boots rather than green ones, because I want to spend tomorrow touring Britain looking for the ditch in which Boris is lying dead.
And I'd be Andrea Britannia. I'd turn up as Britannia.
Would you? I can imagine that, actually. I think, Simon Heffer, you have guaranteed the viral clip on the LBC website with that answer. It has to be said.
I wouldn't wear an EU berry, I'll tell you that much.
Any what?
An EU berry.
Oh, right, yes. Well,
I'm very pleased to hear that.
No yellow stars for you, because you are, for a Lib Dem, you're a bit of a Eurosceptic, aren't you, Norman?
And you're very nice, actually, Norman.
So kind. So kind.
Get him in the Tory party.
Absolutely. We might be able to get you in the Lords.
I think
then.
it's
Come
a
and join us.
mistake, but I do respect democracy, and I think that's important.
Good for you.
Well, thank you to all of you. If you've missed any of this or you'd like to listen to past editions of Cross Question, you can do so on the Cross Question podcast. Norma Lamb, Andrea Jenkyns, Tommy Sheppard, Simon Heffer, thank you very much indeed. Well, the FT are reporting that the Brexit Party will only stand in 20 or 30 Labour Leave seats to improve Boris Johnson's chance of forming a government. I'm alerted to that from Tony in Bristol. Thank you very much indeed for that, Tony. And also, there is apparently a Remain alliance going on. The Liberal Democrats, the Greens and Plaid Cymru are in negotiations about electoral pacts in certain constituencies to ensure a pro-Remain candidate is elected. I want to know, in this election, whether you want to support a Brexit-type candidate or a Remain-type candidate. Would you be willing to vote tactically? 0345 6060 973.
On your radio, on Global Player, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom.